Should a screenwriter really be thinking about selling their first screenplay?
Well, you always want to be thinking about it. I mean, you can be thinking about giving your first Oscar speech, right? That comes with the territory. The question is, do you let that affect the process that you write with? Now, it's always important to have a sense of writing for an audience. In other words, I'm not just writing for myself, I'm not just writing for my immediate family. I want to write a script that a lot of people want to see. But it's very tricky in terms of what steps you take based on that. As I mentioned earlier, it's not about predicting a trend. It's not about predicting what is going to be hot with an audience. It's once you determine certain basic elements that, oh, this can be a commercial story idea, then it's all about forgetting that and getting to what I call the gold of the idea, getting down into what is totally unique about that story idea. Keep in mind, the biggest reason that scripts fail, imagine that 99% of scripts fail at the premise line, when we've only written one sentence, and the biggest reason that they fail is it wasn't an original idea in the first place, right? Yeah, the writers make all kinds of mistakes when it comes to developing that idea, but if you don't start off with an original idea in the first place, it's not going to be an original script. And Hollywood has no interest in that, right? Why are they going to pay the kind of money that is paid for scripts for something that any number of 100, 1,000 people could write? So, and what most writers don't realize is because it's so difficult to dig into an idea and find out what is truly original about it, most writers come up with a premise that is a copy of a movie they saw 6 months ago. Or it's a copy of 2 movies that they put together that they saw 6 months ago. Right? That doesn't make it original. So it's very important that once you have that idea, that you explore it very deeply, find out what is original about it, and if the idea is not original, it's important that you not write it. Now, this is counter to what most writers do. Most writers, when they come up with an idea, they immediately start writing script pages. It's one of the clearest marks of an amateur. And what happens, of course, is they get 15, 20 pages in, they write themselves into a dead end, they just ruined another idea. Now, over years and years of experience that I've had as a writer and a story consultant, I have found that most ideas should not be written as scripts. And it's exactly the opposite of when I started. When I started, I thought there isn't a story idea that I can't make work as a script, that I can't make work as a full-length story. Over years of experience, I've found just the opposite is the case. That the real value of exploring your premise, taking time to make sure it's original, taking time to find out what the structural problems are inherent to the idea. The big value of that comes from finding out that 9 out of 10 ideas that you have should not be written. Because the single biggest choice that a writer makes in the entire writing process, what story do I write? Not how do I write it. Yeah, there's a lot of decisions that go into that. But the most important decision is, what story do I write in the first place? Most stories are so full of structural problems that are embedded in the idea, they will not be solved. I don't care how good you are at story, you will not solve those problems. So why take months and months and a lot of pain to write that as a full-length script just to find out, oh, I didn't solve those structural problems after writing the script, and I knew what they were right at the beginning, right at the premise idea.
So don't build the house without the plans.
Exactly.
Okay. So that's the test, as if your idea is viable, going back to that premise line?
Going back to that premise line. And it's also, again, it goes back to craft. one of the things I spent a lot of time in my Anatomy of Story Masterclass is techniques for breaking down the premise. There are actual techniques that you use to see, is this a good story idea? It's not just, oh, I'm excited about that idea. No, it's about, okay, how do I find out how this is going to work as a 100 to 120 page script, right? That takes technique to be able to jump ahead. Again, we only have one line here. I need to be able to figure out how this is going to work as a 100 to 120 page script. So that requires a number of techniques. To give you an example, you look at that premise idea, and the first thing you look for, is there a desire line embedded in this idea that can track 100 pages, that can extend for 100 pages? Most premise ideas don't have that. Another thing you look at, is there a main opponent in this idea who can fight with the hero over that length of time and can create ongoing conflict for the entire story? Most premise ideas don't have that either. So this is, again, going back to having the tools in order to do your job and at the same time save yourself a lot of pain and wasted writing that kills most writers. I mean, you write a few of those scripts in a row where you go through all that trouble to write the script only to find out that the script is not going to work no matter what you do. You're not going to be writing for very long, right? It's one of the biggest reasons writers give up.
What if you have a lot of tools in place but you don't know your ending? Or does that mean your tools weren't in place?
It means your tools were not in place. That is one of the most important things that you want to figure out. Not necessarily right at the premise line, but pretty close, which is, what is the structural endpoint of my story? And a lot of writers ask me this. They say, well, I like to be more creative, is the term that they use. As though figuring out the endpoint or the structure is uncreative. In fact, the opposite is the case. The better you are at structure, the more creative the script. Because what structure does is it allows you to know what will work and what won't work. So that you know, oh, I can take this really cool creative twist here because I've got this structural scaffolding underneath it to support it. Or I don't have it. Right? So that's why knowing that endpoint is one of the, I'd say, 5 most important techniques in all of story. Keep in mind that every story is a journey of learning that the hero takes over the course of that story. And in any journey you take, you cannot take the first step unless you know where you're going to. Otherwise, you're going to walk around in circles. Same is true in the writing process. And just because you figure out the structural endpoint of your story doesn't mean that you can't change that down the road. It just means that it is going to give you a focus point for every other structure step that story is going to take.